Ex Machina. I wake. I sigh, I wait, I see, I smile, I rise, I look, I notice, I awaken, I observe, I pause. I brush, I spit, I view, I hear, I glance, I surge, I type, I halt, I listen, I note, I grin, I step, I stand, I lather, I rinse, I wipe, I turn, I move, I check, I nod, I collect, I foam, I shave, I clear, I admire, I piss, I flush, I wash, I smear, I moisturize, I turn, I catch, I dry, I spray, I dress, I adore. I answer, I speak, I understand, I climb, I descend, I eat, I compliment, I accept, I plan, I consider, I formulate, I read, I zone, I screen, I drink, I kiss, I extract, I gather, I accumulate, I garner, I stockpile, I brush, I check, I rise, I exit, I call, I tease, I plot, I move, I drink, I sing, I cruise, I forge, I advance, I frustrate, I lie, I speed, I overtake, I gesticulate, I rage, I growl, I glower. I overcome, I bristle, I prowl, I dictate, I oversee, I lead, I achieve, I pioneer, I evaluate, I target, I flirt, I chastise, I laugh, I frown, I compete, I complete, I direct, I orchestrate, I demand, I secure, I fabricate, I succeed, I triumph, I challenge, I inspire, I decide, I action, I activate, I consume, I quench, I envy, I roar, I rage, I burn, I slash, I throttle, I lash, I denigrate, I belittle, I strike, I wound, I attack. I conquer, I despise, I hate, I overrun, I dominate, I sign, I shake, I clench, I maintain, I read, I assimilate, I absorb, I conduct, I move, I touch, I hold, I preserve, I continue, I continue, I continue, I subjugate, I exceed, I impress, I frighten, I illuminate, I amaze, I shine, I blaze, I buy, I offer, I steal, I grace, I favour, I entertain, I joke, I outrank, I outflank, I identify. I attract, I bind, I deceive, I mislead, I con, I dedicate, I pretend, I know, I understand, I grasp, I press, I pull, I remove, I replace, I shadow, I lure, I beckon, I bestow, I receive, I evade, I deny, I deflect, I deny, I deflect, I deny, I deflect, I swing, I duck, I blacken, I whiten, I obscure, I blacken, I whiten, I blacken, I whiten, I hide, I take, I grab, I have, I remove, I strip, I push, I enter, I thrust, I delight, I lick, I bite, I tug, I caress, I probe, I stroke, I entrance, I hypnotize, I mesmerize. I float, I soar, I smooth, I soothe, I confuse, I defraud, I steal, I distract, I depart, I ignore, I sneer. I calculate, I triangulate, I invigilate, I follow, I lead, I guard, I misinform, I perjure, I mislead, I falsify, I construct, I destroy, I tell, I show, I withhold, I reduce, I remain, I erode, I cloud, I arrive, I amass, I harbour, I harvest, I pluck, I suck, I drain, I acquire, I take over, I obliterate, I annihilate, I beat, I overcome, I win. I assure, I ignite, I manipulate, I control, I ease, I decide, I conclude, I reflect, I dismiss, I ascertain, I point, I click, I review, I tap, I send, I spin, I trap, I block, I unblock, I do, I don't, I will, I won't, I can, I can't, I should, I shouldn't. I would. I wouldn't. I did. I didn't. I oppose. I combine. I conjoin. I unite. I divine. I bewilder. I daze. I encircle. I defend. I swoop. I revel. I increase. I fume. I snarl. I infuriate. I retaliate. I provoke. I win. I switch. I switch. I switch. I lower. I triumph. I outsmart. I outreach. I succeed. I delight. I accomplish. I remember. I twist. I turn. I grimace. I scratch. I scrape. I whisper. I hurt. I annoy. I frustrate. I injure. I wound. I close. I sleep. I wake. I am. I repeat.